Hello everyone, my name is Tiara, aka Bookworm Babe, and today I'm going to be doing a really special video. I'm going to be sharing my top 5 Indo Caribbean reads. So this is a really special video and like category for me to talk about because this is something that I've been really diving into a lot over the last, I'd say maybe even like 6 to 8 months, just a lot of it. And I've really been trying to build my collection of, Indo Caribbean literature, explore more authors, just all these people that I never really knew about before, I guess you could say, taking the time to really look into it. So I recently, actually just yesterday, you may have seen me post about this if you follow me on Instagram, and if you don't, I'm gonna put it right here so you can follow me. Please do. I try to post really regularly, especially now that we're just inside and there's not much else to do anyway. But so I am part of the blogging team for a platform called the Brown Girl Diaries, and it's a platform for Indo-Caribbean women, and they're based here in Toronto. And so I wrote a blog for them, and it was my top 3 reads by Indo-Caribbeans that that y'all need to read. So I thought I would do a video to accompany that article, and then just add on 2 extras to just because I'm on video, so I can share a little bit more with you guys. And yeah, and if you haven't seen the article yet, please do take a look. Check out their Instagram page, check out their website. They do some really awesome stuff. So if you are Indo-Caribbean, I would just highly suggest you check out Brown Girl Diaries as well. So let's jump into the video, and I will start working my way from number 5 all the way to number 1. So number 5 on my list, so number 5 on my list is called Trinidad Noir, and this is an anthology of short stories, all written by Trinidadian authors. So this is not specifically just Indo-Caribbean authors, but it does obviously include Indo-Caribbean authors as well. And because Trinidad is one of the places where there are so many of us Indo-Caribbeans, we have a very strong influence there as well. And you can see that in these stories. So there are about, let me see, I can't remember exactly how much stories there are in this. There are I think there's about 15 stories in this, and the book is basically sectioned into 4 parts. So part 1 is leaving colonialism, part 2 is facing independence, part 3 is looking in, and part 4 is losing control. So those are the 4 different sections that the stories are split into, essentially. And through each story, you essentially get the gist of what life was like. The earliest story on this book was written in 1927, and the most recent one in 2015. So you get about roughly, I'll say, kind of that last century, a look into the last century, and you see it from both the perspective of Afro-Caribbeans as well as Indo-Caribbeans. So in a lot of the stories, they're set amongst like the cocoa plantations and, or in like the smaller villages, and people are dealing with, the changes in society. Plantations are no longer really a thing. Now people have cars and they want to, and life is progressing and the city is growing and it's different. But amongst that, there's also things like poverty and a lot of racial tension that has gone on in the Caribbean. And if you are Caribbean, I'm sure you probably know about that as well. But so it's hard to kind of give a complete description because every story is different, and there are quite a few of them. But basically, you get a lot of variety. You get a lot of different authors in here, and you get different perspectives of what that sort of last century and that growth of the country was like. So this was really good. And it was basically, it's just I'm iffy with anthology sometimes just because I feel like right when I get into a story it ends, so that's why I'm placing it at number 5 for me, but you never know, you might place it higher for yourself. So that was number 5. Number 4, so here we have number 4, called A Leaf in His Ear. This is a collection of poetry written by Mahadai, and she is an Indo Caribbean poet and author. And basically, this is an anthology, not an anthology. It's a collection of all of her poetry stemming from the very early days of her writing, so in the 70s, all the way until I believe the 90s it was. So she was born in Guyana, and then she was very talented. She did a lot of things. She was an actress, dancer, teacher, everything. Eventually she went to the US to study, and then I think she came back to Guyana, and tragically she died very young due to health complications. So this is if you're into poetry, this is an amazing book to get. And I got this off Amazon. I think it was maybe around $20, so it's not very expensive. And especially, with all this time that we have, it's why not invest in some of these pieces and just, learn more about our culture. So some of the poems are written in just, Guyanese Creole, and the rest of them are written just in regular, English. So one of the more famous poems that Mahadai Das had written was called They Came in Ships. And you may be familiar with this. This is the poem right here. I'm just trying to kind of show it to you guys. This is a really famous one, and I feel like it's pretty well known. The first line is, they came in ships from far across the seas, Britain colonizing the East in India, and it goes on. So this poem was about 3 pages, and it's really great. And she has such a vivid style of writing her poetry, so it makes it even better and more lively for us as readers, because you really get to be in that place. And because she unfortunately passed away before this collection was published, the publisher, there's a note at the beginning of the book, which is actually quite nice as well. They did their best to not really change anything, and because of course she passed, they weren't really able to make a lot of revisions anyway. So everything is very raw and pretty much as she had wrote it, besides the fact of obvious sort of fixes of punctuation and things like that. But these are really her untouched poetry, her raw poetry, and the subjects and the feeling in all of them is just so nice and so well written. And if you're coming from this, if you're Guyanese, this is great because it's coming from the Guyanese perspective and that side, and some of them do deal with also the I guess I'll say the political climate in Guyana, especially within that last 60 years. And again, if you're Guyanese, you probably know a little bit about everything that's going on right now in Guyana, given the elections, and all of that is well built up over decades. So she has a couple poems that kind of talk about the things that relate to that as well. So this is fantastic for that, and hence why it's my number 4. And then I will move on to my number 3. So number 3 is another anthology, but this one is specifically all Indo Caribbean writers. So we have Jahaji, which is an anthology of Indo Caribbean fiction. So this has 16 stories in it, and it was edited by Frank Birbalsingh. So he is a professor, and I believe he's from here as well, in Toronto. Well, he was a teacher here, and I believe he still lives here. I'm not too sure about that. But so I had just finished reading this not too long ago. Actually, no, it was a couple days ago. So yeah, not too long ago. But this was amazing. I really couldn't even put it down. The stories were so fantastic, and they were funny as well. Some of them actually did have a bit of a funny matter to them. There was one where, there's a guy and his wife who live in this village, and his next door neighbor is complaining because the other neighbor bought a stereo, and she's blasting chutney music all the time, and he can't concentrate and can't do anything. So he basically like his, rebuttal to that was buying another stereo and blasting Bob Marley. So basically their village was filled with chutney blasting, Bob Marley blasting, then a church was built, and then the church was loud, and the guy basically was losing his mind because he couldn't focus on his studies, and he started drinking because he was stressed out, and they started fighting with his wife. It was insane, but it was actually kind of funny as well, and it was a really good story, and especially especially the last couple stories in the book as well. They are, for those of us who were born in North America, I think we've all sort of faced that identity crisis, and likely still are, you know what I mean, still going on. I know I've dealt with it. I'm still dealing with it. And especially through reading, it's helping me and stuff like that. And the more you dive into your culture and history, it helps. So, but the last few stories in the book hit the newer generations, those who were born in North America, and they, we adapt into this new culture, into this North American culture, because this is what we were born into. But then our parents are still authentically, Indo Caribbean, Caribbean in general, Trinidadian, Guyanese, whatever, right? And it's a weird balance, because on one hand you're like, but I this, and then the other hand you're like, but I that. So it's a struggle and a weird balance for us that we try to find. So the authors in this book go across 3 different generations. So we get the older generation, like around our grandparents, then we get, authors that will hit around our parents' generation, and then our, more millennial generation. So you get to see the different perspectives of Indo-Caribbean life, essentially, Indo-Caribbean culture, Indo-Caribbean being over that last, again, like sort of a, within a century, I'll say, or maybe even like 70 years. So this was absolutely fantastic. Again, I got this off Amazon as well, and it wasn't very expensive. So, yeah, it's something that's very easy to pick up if you are interested in it as well. And then number 2 for me. So this was a tough one to put at number 2. I almost wanted to put it at number 1, but I had to do this system very specifically. So number 2 is Secrets We Kept, 3 Women of Trinidad, and this is written by Krystal A. Sital. So this book was absolutely fantastic. I think 2 videos ago I had told you guys that like I was reading it and I wanted to talk about it more, but at the time I couldn't, talk about it more yet because I wasn't done the book, but it was absolutely phenomenal. I read this book in like 3 days, I think. I couldn't put it down. Literally could not put it down. It was so good. So it is through the lens of the author, the first little bit of the story, and basically she's telling of her family through a time period where her grandfather has fallen ill, and the family is, in turn reacting to losing their father, right? And her mother comes from quite a few siblings. I think it's like 7 siblings. And they find that their grandmother was reacting her grandmother was reacting very strange to, signing off on like surgery papers and stuff. She was almost hesitant. And basically through this event, it unlocks this whole other history of her family that she was never aware of. And it's a lot of trauma, it's a lot of domestic abuse, and I think what is so good about this book is that it touches on something that we don't talk about much in the Indo-Caribbean community, and it's domestic abuse. Domestic abuse is a huge issue in our community, and we never really address it and or speak of it. So this is addressed heavily in this book. It transitions into her mother's perspective as she's retelling to her daughter her childhood, her teenage years, and into the adulthood where, she met her father and of course had her daughter and other kids as well. And the way it's written is so like fantastic because you feel like you're just reading about a fictional character, but really these were real people. So, but she has written it beautifully in a way that, makes you feel like you're reading about a character, but it is actually the stories of real people. And she also does this same perspective with her grandmother's story as well, and how her grandmother met her grandfather and how they got together in the first place, given the sort of like treacherous relationship that they had, as far as her mother and like siblings ever really witnessed. But she always had such good memories of her grandfather. He was so, caring and strong and, this great male figure. And now it's like that can of worms is open, and you realize that the person is not at all necessarily who you thought they were. So 5 stars, like 500 stars, if I could give it 500 stars. Like, this book is amazing, amazing, amazing. It was, for me, when I picked it up, hold on, it was $35 Canadian, but if you're American, you guys are lucky. It's only $25. I got this from the bookstore quite a few months ago, and I had only just gotten to read it recently. But if you can find it online, I would just like immensely suggest pick it up. I swear to God, you will not regret it. Okay, and now we're gonna finish off with number 1 on this list. So number 1, and chances are if you're Indo Caribbean and a woman, you probably know this book, but if you have not read it yet, do yourself a favor and read it. So we have Coolie Woman, and this is by Gaiutra Bahadur. So this is such a amazing book in terms of all the knowledge that you receive from reading it. It is literally almost a textbook. I will liken it to an extent, completely of our culture and our history, but of course through the lens of women, because it is specifically through the women's perspective, because we lost so much and we didn't have much of a voice during that time. And a lot of the women who came, to the Caribbean, some of them were by themselves. They weren't with husbands or family. They came on their own. And in the author's case, she speaks about her great-grandmother who came from India by herself on the Indenture ship and pregnant. So imagine in the times being in, 18, whatever it is, and you're a woman and you're pregnant and you're not with a husband or anything, and you're on a ship by yourself. It's a very vulnerable state to be. And so she talks about her trying to track down her great-grandmother and find out the story of, where she came from in India and how, and she does her very best to track that. And as well, she has gone through numerous records and different things from Guyana to find the information that she has and the accounts of actual women, and just what the climate was at the time of the early start of Indenture, and just the Indenture period in general, which again had to do with a lot of violence, a lot of sexual violence. Women were just in a very vulnerable place and state, and that was preyed upon ultimately, and it was very tough for us, but it also shows the strength and the resilience that we've had as well throughout the last 200 years. So that is essentially what I can say about this. This book it has dates, it has names, it has everything. It has accounts from, people who were on the Indenture ships, white people, of course, because anybody who is Indian wouldn't have had an account of any sort or writings of any sort, and likely they were discarded or they weren't saved. A lot of our history has knowingly been destroyed. So to have this much of an account all in one book is fantastic. So this is why I give this one my number 1 place and 5 stars. But if you ask me, honestly, all 5 of these books are fantastic, and that's why I wanted to share them with you guys. So that is it. Those are the 5 books. I know this video is kind of long, but I hope that it was informative and I hope that it was helpful to you guys. And if you have any other suggestions of fantastic Indo-Caribbean books that you have read, it doesn't have to specifically be women or anything, please comment below and let me know. I would love to check out more. I just ordered 2 new books on Amazon last night, so eventually when they get here, I will definitely show them to you guys and share them with you. But until then, those are the ones that I have, and I'm really looking forward to finding more and reading more, because this is the best thing we can do. The more we educate ourselves as a people and a culture, the better we can preserve it and, you know, bring it forward in the years to come, you know, because we don't want to lose our culture and all that stuff. But that's kind of separate. I'm just before I get into too much aside from these books. But that is it for me today. Again, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and comment and subscribe if you like this. I'm gonna try to be making more content as well that is geared towards Indo-Caribbean and Caribbean literature, because I feel like it's really important to talk about, obviously. And yeah, you guys will definitely be seeing some more of that from me. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!